Children of a Darker Dawn is a UK film by Jason Figgis, independent film released in 2013 that I discovered this year accidentally, like I usually discover all independent films, especially, but films in general. Just browsing through YouTube and film reviewists and film collectors, and this one happened to pop up, and I happened to see one scene in particular from it that really intrigued me. Highly disturbing and, well, pretty unique and I don't know about different, but definitely eye-catching, that's for sure. And that's what made me, look into this and find it for cheap and go and pick it up and give it a watch. And this is my second viewing of it. First viewing, I didn't really know what to think of it, and I'm not gonna lie, on my second viewing, I don't really know what to think of it either. It's it's worth seeing, especially if you like independent cinema, especially if you like UK cinema, because this is this is really like in the style of UK. It takes place in Dublin, Ireland. It's an Irish film, and it's a post-apocalyptic film. It's a post-apocalyptic film, and it's really dark. I mean, Children of a Darker Dawn, they're not kidding around. It's a very, very dark piece of cinema. You follow a bunch of kids basically. I don't know. I didn't recognize any of the actors or actresses, but yeah, there's a bunch in here. A slew of characters, all pretty good for the most part. I mean, there's definitely, I would consider, a lot of overacting going on, but I think that just comes with the nature of being an independent film, and and not having a grade A cast or well-known cast kind of thing. They kind of just take who they can, but and it's a lot of younger actors and actresses as well, but they all do very, very well for what they're given. But anyways, synopsis: you're following this plague. There's this outbreak of this plague, which basically gives off like flu-like symptoms. Sound familiar? Yeah, perfect one to throw on in these times. But this plague is giving off flu-like symptoms, which basically lead to severe paranoia, violent behavior, and then eventually death, usually by suicide. And this virus seems to be affecting adults only. So basically all children and teens, I would say anybody like 17 and under, which seems to be from the cast, do not get infected and do not seem to suffer any symptoms that everybody else does. Basically everybody's parents. And this virus breaks out, and then it flashes forward to 9 months later, and you follow these two girls named Fran and Evie. And Evie's the older sister. She's taking care of her little sister Fran, and they're hiding out in basically this abandoned house, which looks like a house that was either foreclosed or about to be put up for sale. But the whole place is abandoned. There's nothing in it. There's no furniture. There's some mattresses, which you assume that's brought in by them. And Evie is trying to care for her little sister and, basically surviving with her. And her whole motive to live is just taking care of her little sister Fran. And they're in this house, and then a bunch of other kids start to show up. And they show up very randomly. They kind of almost like appear. And I wouldn't say they're delusions or hallucinations, because I didn't really take the film that way, although of course it's a possibility that they could be, but because for the whole film mostly you're following Fran and Evie and their survival. But these other kids start to show up, and then this house basically becomes filled with I don't know, approximately 10 to 15 kids of all various ages, and they start to clash with each other a lot. And things start to really escalate with their clashing. And the whole film is just a lot of banter back and forth. This film actually reminds me of like a stage play. Like I wouldn't be surprised if this script was actually based on a stage play, from the way the characters banter back and forth. They spend pretty much most of their time reading to each other. It starts with Evie reading to Fran, and then they meet this girl named Alice, and then these two other characters come in named Hellman and Grace and Simon, and they basically they're conversing to each other about what happened to them in the last few months with their parents, and they just start reading to each other and then start clashing with each other. Like there's a situation where one group of kids robbed the other one's food, and there's a story that one of them says about where they were previously, where they had to resort to cannibalism, and it's just a slew of fuckery that these kids go through. And when it comes to the flashbacks too of their parents, they show glimpses and scenes of their parents wigging out back in the last few months, and they're gnarly, man. Like those scenes are really hard to watch, and just watching these parents wig out, they suffer from severe paranoia for sure, but they also go through these like really strong and massive fits of dementia, where they flip back and forth, like the most severe bipolarism of recognizing their children and being loving, straight to not recognizing them at all and looking at them as an enemy and attacking, and then going right back to parent mode, and then within like 30 seconds, 20 seconds of each other. And it's just all the performances by the parents, even though they're only in flashbacks and they're not in the present moment of the story, which is basically surrounding the kids in this abandoned house. But the flashbacks, when it does focus on the parents and they're tripping, the way they like I said, wig out, and how they behave. I mean, there's a scene where it involves a father and a mother at a dinner table, and the only way I can describe the dad going through his illness is like, if you can imagine like a really hardcore pastor, like trying to preach the holy savior into somebody, multiplied by 1,000, mixed with some paranoia into that. Like just the way this guy is talking, he's just wigging out and like so not possessed, but so out of his mind, delusional and passionate. Just it's so hard to describe. It's so scary to watch, because you really see these people's minds unravel in front of you. And then there's another one, without going into spoilers, but involving like a knife, and a lot of these people, this paranoid illness of whatever you want to call it, drives a lot of people to self-harm and self-suicide and self massacre themselves. And it's just brutal, and it's hard to watch. It's a very disturbing film to watch. It's funny because watching this film, it kind of reminds me of the film Mom and Dad that came out recently with Nicolas Cage, except take away all the humor in it completely, because Mom and Dad is kind of more of a black comedy, but involves, parents psychologically snapping in their heads and going after their children. But although that one had a comedic tone, this one has no comedic tone. This is just a dark, dreadful film. This is Dread 101. One reviewist compared it or gave a quote about it saying a modern doomsday version of Lord of the Flies, which in the children's aspect with them kind of bantering back and forth, I can see that, and hiding out, kind of trying to survive this plague and having no parents around, because that's the big thing about it too, is they have no protection other than each other, and when it comes to each other, they're usually at each other's throats, because who can you trust? I mean, everybody's just fending for themselves, and there's no sense of protection or sense of community anymore. Everything's just gone and wiped out. And I mean, the last thing they remember is their parents, who are supposed to take care of them, going batshit. So it turned into a really scary world and a really grim world. This film is like, just even the color schemes and like the grays and stuff like that, very draining and very very, very depressing and just grim all throughout, and but yeah, like, I don't know how to feel about this film, because it doesn't really conclude to anything other than survival with Fran and Evie, and and just raising the question of, can you trust anybody during times of turmoil? But there's no plot, like, direction. There's no climax or conclusion kind of thing. You just meet a bunch of characters and you get their backstory, and everybody's just trying to survive. And it's basically a fend for yourself kind of film at the end of it. But like I said, they mainly it's Fran and Evie, and they basically try to survive by reading. And reading brings more flashbacks of their parents and this deadly, mysterious plague that came about, and it's kind of just a situation. Like, it's a film that has no destination. It's just kind of asking yourself, what would you do in that situation. There's a lot of, like, teen angst, and there's a lot of like I said, I don't know about the overacting. Maybe it's part of it, but I don't necessarily know how to feel about the overacting, whether it's good or bad. I can't say, but it's definitely noticeable, that's for sure. Yeah, that pretty much covers everything. It's more of like an experience kind of film, like something to be. It's definitely like it. I would recommend experiencing it once. It's not a very easy watch. It's not a pleasant watch. It is slow. It is a slow burn and a slow watch. You see these young kids devolve kind of thing, and sort of become completely inhumane to this bizarre ass situation, and you kind of just experience it with them. That's really what the film is, that I got from it. Still a recommendation, but you should know what you're getting into. Like, I'd say half and half, like maybe somewhere in the 50 out of 100 area, because like I said, it's a hard one to really pinpoint kind of its purpose, I would say. It's a film to be experienced, not it's not going to show you anything you don't already know, and you're not already kind of predicting, and it doesn't give you like any mind-blowing lessons on life or anything like that. It's just a really dark and grim story of what would happen if kids were left to fend for themselves after their parents go apeshit bananas. So, and like the way it's directed and the way it's acted, it's really, really, really dark. So that's all I got on it. That's Children of a Darker Dawn, Irish film, directed by Jason Figgis, and it's been in a lot of film festivals, like horror conventions and stuff like that. 4 stars from Zombie Hamster, The Conduit Speaks, Horror Cult Films, and Blood Guts. And yeah, I mean, hey, it is what it is. That's the kind of film it is. It's watch the trailer, watch some clips of it. It's a doozy for a dark kind of post-apocalyptic film. It's one hell of a doozy, but that's all I got for it. So that's Children of a Darker Dawn. Until next time, see you later. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like my reviews, and cheers.